I won't let you go, no. Hey, gotta make you a confession. Boy, you're the most beautiful I've ever seen. Like a king, baby, you're the one for me. Hey, pretty boy, I got a question. Do you wanna roll with me? Do you wanna stroll with me? Come on, baby. Boy, you're above all. You're making me fall. Can't think about no one else. Only you in my head. Let's give it a try. Come on and baby, we'll fly right up to the sky. Hey, pretty boy, you're like, boy, you're above all. You're making me fall. Can't think about no one else. Only you in my head. Let's give it a try. Come on and baby, we'll fly right up to the sky. Hey, pretty boy, you're like, boy, you like, boy, you like, boy, you like. You're the only one I think about, yeah. You're the only one for me. The only one I care about, yeah. About, yeah. Thinking about you day and night, yeah. You're the only one for me. I just wanna get it right, yeah. Right, yeah. Ooh, yeah, yeah. You're the one I'm thinking of. Come on and take my love. Let's go and we can fly away. Taking off to the sky, it's you and me tonight. Whoa, baby. You know there was something special. Baby boy, you are my treasure. I know we got it, I know we got it, baby. Got it, baby, yeah, yeah. I knew that it was something special. Baby boy, you are my treasure. I know we got it, I know we got it, baby. Got it, baby, yeah. It's amazing how you rock the world. You're the only one for me. Never thought that I would be your girl. Ooh, yeah, yeah. You're the one I'm thinking of. Come on and take my love. Let's go and we can fly away. We're taking off to the sky. It's you and me tonight. Whoa, baby. You know there was something special. Baby boy, you are my treasure. I know we got it, I know we got it, baby. Got it, baby, yeah, yeah. I knew that it was something special. Baby boy, you are my treasure. I know we got it, I know we got it, baby. Got it, baby, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I know we got it, I know we got it, I know we got it, baby. Got it, baby, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, it's been 27 nights without you here by my side, and I've been counting every hour. 'Cause since you stepped out of my life, oh, she ain't coming back. All my friends are saying that, so you don't even have to try. 'Cause she ain't your Mrs. Right. But that love was true love, and they've got no clue. And I don't know what to do. I've tried to ignore it, 'cause that is what they say. But deep down I know it won't work out this way. Tell me, are you feeling like I'm feeling? Only you would know, 'cause I can't Show girls they do the same, telling I'm the one to blame. And you believed in all the rumors, yeah. They told you I was playing games. Oh no, she ain't coming back. All my friends are saying that, so you don't even have to try. Cause she ain't your Mrs. Right. But that love was true love, and they've got no clue, and I don't know what to do. Hey. I've tried to ignore it, cause that is what they say. But deep down I know it won't work out this way. Tell me, are you feeling like I'm feeling? Only you would know, cause I can't seem to let you go. I can't seem to let you go. I can't seem to let you go. You ain't here no more. My life is a bore, yeah. I just try my best, gotta live it, but I'm nothing like before. We used to be strong, together we couldn't do wrong. Now the magic is gone. I've tried to ignore it, cause that is what they say. But deep down I know it won't work out this way. Tell me, are you feeling like I'm feeling? Only you would know, cause I can't seem to let you go. I can't seem to let you go. I've tried to ignore it, cause that is what they say. But deep down I know it won't work out this way. Tell me, are you feeling like I'm feeling? Only you would know, cause I can't seem to let you go. No, I can't seem to let you go.
You're the only one I think about, yeah. You're the only one for me. The only one I care about, yeah. About, yeah. Thinking about you day and night, yeah. You're the only one for me. I just wanna get it right, yeah. Right, yeah. Ooh, yeah, yeah. You're the one I'm thinking of. Come on and take my love. Let's go and we can fly away. Taking off to the sky, it's you and me tonight. Whoa, baby, you know there was something special. Baby boy, you are my treasure. to face